Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. The new mining charter has been described as a weakened piece of legislation that would result in more protest action, with the Chamber of Mines going to court to halt the devastating blow to an already battered mining sector. Martin Creamer joins me in studio to discuss the concerns with the charter. Hi Martin.
Hi Tracy.
What is the set of legal requirements that the new mining charter has put in place, or rather unleashed on the industry?
Well, there's a whole set of them. It's as long as your arm. But the most devastating one is this curious 1% of turnover. You don't know whether it's a tax or a royalty, because it goes towards an agency that we've never heard of before. But that is really serious, because you're talking about 1% on whether a mining company makes a profit or not. So it's in the same category as that royalty, which is already being charged. But the power to do this really vests with the Treasury. You can't have the Mineral Resources Department actually usurping what is normally the job of the Treasury. But this is what they've done within this bill, and it's not only 1% on turnover of mining companies going into this agency for boosting of skills and other things, but there's also 1% on all foreign products and services coming into the country. So if there's a foreign subsidiary here supplying goods and services to the mining industry, they also are required to pay 1% of turnover to this agency. It's the most curiously draconian set of rules you can imagine, and that's just one we're harping on. It's like going out, they claimed that they wanted to develop a sort of a racehorse that would go flying through and streamline, but we've got a situation where it's worse than a camel. The outcome has been worse than a camel from this DMR committee, the Department of Mineral Resources Committee, that has gone into this unilaterally without consulting hardly anyone, because even the Benchmarks Foundation, which is very close to the community, is complaining bitterly about the lack of communication. So you get the lack of consultation, issue being taken to court by the chamber. You get the Benchmarks Foundation, which works closely with communities, saying, how can you just speak to a few chiefs and then come up with this idea that you've got for boosting community interests there? We're not interested. It's terrible. They condemn it in the strongest terms. So you've got the Chamber of Mines saying this is nailing the final coffin, nail into the coffin of the industry, because the industry is already bleeding profusely. And all of a sudden you've got more battering going on. A long list of nice to have, and just ticking it off with all sorts of percentages of people that you have to do at senior management level, at middle management level, at junior management level. And it's just unattainable. You can see that from the mining industry's point of view, they're saying, you're setting us up to fail. We're going to fail here because you can't have this. You can see that they even ran to the African National Congress, and that economics committee listened to them, and you'll see that if you look on ANC Today, if you get on that website, they are quite critical of what is happening, and particularly around the issue of the naturalization of certain people, saying that you are declared a black person if you are naturalized, even if you're naturalized after 1994 and you're coloured or Indian. You're still naturalized, and they're saying, gee whiz, who are these people coming in here? It's like feeding your neighbor's kids before you feed your own kids. That's what they're saying on the site there. So they're not happy about several aspects of this, and that is the ruling party's ANC.
And do you think the Chamber is going to be successful in its application for an interim court interdict to suspend the implementation of the new mining charter?
You can never tell with a court case. It's always risky, but you would say that they've got a strong case. They want to go for this interim interdict. That'll be the first stage, saying, hey, stop this, because the button has been pushed. It's now in force. It's gazetted. So I think that they are likely to get a good hearing there, because they haven't had a hearing anywhere else. So the court might say, well, okay, let's have an interim session where this is not in force. And then the second part is that they want to review it. They want the courts to say, yes, this must be reviewed. And then they've got a third aspect as well. They want to try and restore this idea that once empowered is always empowered, because the implications of not doing that and having to empower every time, your 30% now BEE arrangement is changed, hammers shareholders. That causes huge dilution. It's frightening people off already. I mean, you can see that London investors were told this week, and it's just as by the by, there's a listing coming up in London of a platinum project in Brazil. Now, we don't normally associate platinum with Brazil. We think, Southern Africa, we've got all the platinum. Yeah, but people look for this stuff now because they see that there's a lot of uncertainty in South Africa. And they told the investors in London in no uncertain terms, South Africa's going one way. You better invest with us if you want platinum. Now, this is the sort of reaction that you get. You can see that the lawyers are very unhappy with many aspects of this mining charter, because it looks like it's going to cause the whole South African economy to go headlong in a clash with the World Trade Organization and the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trades and all these things. So it's huge unintended consequences. Intended consequences don't seem to be helping anyone, not even the communities. Labour, is now cut into a shareholding, an 8% shareholding, and so is the communities. But the Benchmarks Foundation said, gee, who's going to monitor this? They don't even say, and who's going to, why should the communities have to pay for this? A lot of queries, so many queries that they're just popping up all over the place, and yet the minister's going out to see various communities. It's like possibly going into an area where people have got very little understanding of industry, and they're trying to get their support, which, you've got to get more support than that, not just the one set of stakeholders.
And coming back to the transformation aspect of the mining charter, the president of the Chamber of Mines, Msolisi Mgojo, has come out and said that the mining industry is South Africa's most transformed.
It is the most transformed, and if you look at the pay levels, and compare them, say, with construction, the mining industry is way ahead. They've always tried to be far ahead, and so they have had this idea of transformation going since 2000. They've been working on it, since the first mining charter. So of course their scorecard is going up. If you look at the transformation of just on the ownership levels and the various black economic empowerment levels, they average above this 30% that the government is now wanting. So they have been trying to do better than what they've been required to do. If you look at some of the housing that's gone up and the way that they've got rid of the single-sex hostels, you look at the trouble they're having in Durban at the moment. That's the president's area, Jacob Zuma's KwaZulu-Natal. They've still got single-sex hostels there. Really, that's the government and the municipalities telling the mining industry, gee, you've got to get rid of these single-sex hostels, and they have done. And you've got to get better housing, and they have done. But what do? They allow these single-sex hostels to continue. It's so ironic. That's what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. And the new president, Msolisi Mgojo, his company, Exoro, is black-controlled. They've done a lot of wonderful transformation. And if you go through the mining sector, the chamber controls 90% of the mining industry. And the level of transformation has been considerable. At management level, senior management level, supervisor level, that's what they've been working on. So it is the most transformed business because they started first. They had their charter out first. They were the first with the charter, and then the issue of once empowered, always empowered came up, and the second charter demanded that you get a new empowerment partner. But if you look at the actual law at the moment, the minister isn't even empowered to come out with a new charter. because that law hasn't gone through Parliament yet. It's still stuck in the parliamentary passages. It hasn't been corrected, so he hasn't actually got any power to do what he's doing. So I think, yes, maybe the courts will recognize that, and maybe the Chamber will win this hands down.
And like you said, the Benchmarks Foundation has come out accusing the DMR of inadequate consultation with communities. What are some of the issues that the foundation has noted?
And this foundation's got quite a lot of credibility because it comes out of the churches, the South African Council of Churches, a lot of membership there. So they are really wanting communities to get a good deal out of the mining sector. So they're not pro-mining by any manner of means. And they are saying, look, the way you've come out with this by just speaking to a few chiefs is ridiculous. You haven't actually got down to speaking to the community, finding out what really are the real issues are, but you then come up with an 8% shareholding, and we say, they shouldn't have to even pay for anything like that. You're raising certain funds to do it, but we've seen what's happened in other areas, where the community funding that has been, or funding that's been given to the community has suddenly just disappeared. So who's going to actually monitor this? And they haven't really shown any confidence in this new agency that hasn't even been set up yet by the Department of Mineral Resources, but yet this whole obligation is actually enforced now in terms of a Gazette notice. Now, I think there are going to be a lot of court cases. I can't see it really getting off the ground because there are just too many issues. And maybe it's designed, because there's a policy meeting coming up with the ANC, and maybe, the people in this faction of the party are wanting to wave a flag as if they're doing something radical. Radical economic transformation is in progress here. Look at this mining charter. Maybe that's what they want to show without even bothering whether it's going to pass legal muster. That's what it seems to me.
And even Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa has come out saying that the government and the mining industry need to go back to the drawing board to recraft the mining charter. Why does he believe so? That's what
this whole new South Africa has been about. You've got down and you've worked out a new constitution together. The mining industry, Charter 1, the government, Labour and business sat down and they worked it out together. I can still show you the pictures. I mean, it was really something to behold. I don't think any other country in the world has come close to it. With the mining charter 2, they did the same thing. I was sitting there, how they were maybe all unhappy together or all happy together. They weren't happy with everything, but they also weren't totally unhappy because they were getting a movement forward. And this is the way we work. And that's how, Cyril Ramaphosa, who's one of the architects of the Constitution and dealt with it, that's what he's used to. So he's saying this is no good because you can't impose a charter on someone. A charter is not like even the legislation. It's more of a policy. It's always been more of a policy. Okay, they're trying to turn it into legislation, but it's not law yet, as they're saying. It hasn't gone through Parliament. So it's still in a policy stage. Surely then, the people who have to do all the work, because the government doesn't do, surely you speak to them, because they might just say, hey, this is absolutely impossible. We'll all close down. And what good is that going to do? If there's there's already so many jobs lost in the industry that in the last 5 years, between 60,000 and 75,000 jobs lost. This creates a situation where there's greater job loss. And you can see that other countries, they cheer. They say, oh, this is South Africa, oh, not going to supply. Wow, we can give you these supplies. So who is the Department of Mineral Resources really benefiting? Not South Africa. They're hurting it. They're hurting it left, right and centre. And it's already in quite a battered state. So it's not the thing to do. It's just not, it's just so bad for the country that words fail you.
And how may the controversial procurement rules that have come out under the new mining charter prevent or violate South Africa's obligations under the general agreement on tariffs and trade.
You see these procurement, the procurement law now, which they've laid down in this document of the mining charter, it gives preference to South Africans, and this falls foul immediately of what they call the General Agreement of Tariffs and Trade in the world. This is GATT. You know, it's something that you have to adhere to if you want to be in the world trade, and we do want to be in world trade. It's very important to be in world trade. Now, what do you want to do? Put a big fence around the country and say, no, we're not interested in world trade. We'll do it at home. You can't. It's impossible at this stage to supply the equipment that is needed in mining. It's not as if we manufacture it here. Now they're saying, no, they're going to give preference to people who manufacture it here, to a disadvantage of the foreign suppliers of both goods and services, and they're going to put what it looks like a tax on these people, a 1% of turnover. you know, when you think of that, that's a major thing to do. So they are going to go screaming to the World Trade Organization, saying, no, you know, these guys are falling foul of this agreement that they've signed. They're signatories to this, yet they're ignoring it both on the supply of goods side and on the services side. We're going to drag them through the World Trade Organization. And this has an impact on the whole economy. Never mind the mining industry. It takes you into all sorts of corners of the South African economy. And just think of these state-owned enterprises. You know, if mining starts to tumble, what happens to Transnet? You know, what happens to all those wagons that they've got ready to transport coal and all the iron ore, and they've set up such an elaborate situation? They get hit. So, you know, what happens to Eskom? That's supposed to be supplying electricity, and now there's not a demand. You can see them already running outside the country saying, you know, does this country want our electricity? We'll put it into the pool, because there's not enough demand. So you can see that on every score, South Africa is losing out, and the state enterprise will lose out. Private sector will lose out. It's just got to be stopped. I mean, it's really got to be stopped in its tracks. And you can see that the more enlightened side of the ANC is saying this is not good for the country. So that does give one a lot of hope. The Deputy President is saying, no, guys, get back to the drawing board there. Work this out, because this is not good. This unilateral action is not what South Africa is all about. So I think that those voices should carry, but you still wonder what will happen, you know, at the policy conference of the ANC next week. What will happen December when there's a new leader elected? Will these people also say to the Department of Mineral Resources, no, you can't work like this? Or will they say, no, this is part of our new style of government? So there's a lot of uncertainty.
Thanks, Martin.
It's a great pleasure, Tracy.
That's it for today. Join us again next week for more news analysis on the South African mining industry.